So, I was walking all through town looking for stories. I checked in the bushes and underneath rocks and in the inside of trash cans. And while there were many interesting stories, nothing really popped out to me. That is until I passed a woman in a bog laying on a patch of moss in the middle of a body of water. Now, typically in this situation, I would instinctively run away, but my curiosity overpowered any historical fears of sirens, which I have kept secret until this very moment. The woman had a faraway look, and she seemed to be looking for birds in the trees or perhaps something past the sky. I called from across the water, "Would you be so kind as to tell me a story?" And from across the water I heard her say, "I'd rather not." "Do you mind if I ask why?" No response. I asked more questions. "Where are you from? What is your name? Do you need help?" At this, she actually turned to me as if seeing me for the first time. Then with an exasperated sigh, she pointed at a puddle at the base of my feet. It was a murky puddle, with a reddish organic matter circling round and small mushrooms popping up on the side. Confused, I asked, "Am I supposed to drink this?" She wagged her finger. "Am I supposed to, dunk my head in here?" She nodded and put her finger up to her lips and shushed me. I dunked my head into the pool and found myself flung into, I suppose, her life, her memories. Her name was Wanda. She was born in a prominent family with a silver spoon in her mouth. The youngest of 7 children, growing up her entire life was planned for her success. She went to the most prestigious of schools and studied with the finest of teachers. Every hour of her day was scheduled so that she would be a masterful harpist, a fiercely intelligent debater, and a strong sabreuse. That's a fencer who uses a saber blade. And when she came out of that gilded machine, she entered the world of corporate finance. The next few years of her life was a time of acquisition. She acquired a house with a yard as large as a forest. She acquired a husband that her family would approve of. And she acquired everything there was to acquire. And when she realized this, something inside of her began to shift out of place. Or perhaps into place. What was important to her began to change. One day, her handsome husband came from the house with a glass of lemonade and approached her on her hammock and said, "I want us to start a family." She was laying on the hammock looking up, and with a deep breath she said, "I'd rather not." Lemonade spilled on the grass. Then, her mother and father came to the house, and by that time it was night, and they urged her to reconsider. As the night air chilled, they said, "You must go back in your house." To which she said, "I'd rather not." The clouds passed and revealed the moon, and her family's reasoning became demands, until her strong husband scooped her up and brought her up to bed. The following day, they said it was the beginning of the work week, and it was time to go in. "I'd rather not," she said. And they explained about the expenses and the expectations and the exceptional life she was meant to live. But this did not sway Wanda, and she lay looking out the window, perhaps for birds or something past the sky. Her husband had made calls and explained to her office that she was not feeling well and would be using her sick leave. It would buy them time to figure all this out. Surely it wouldn't take longer than a week. The doctor shined lights in Wanda's eyes and took her temperature and asked her questions. Returning his stethoscope around his neck, he explained it was likely she was having a manic repressive episode brought on by self-imposed pressure, or she had succumbed to a deep state of prepartum depression instigated by her inability to have children, or she was in a state of schizophrenia triggered by some sort of chemical imbalance. She still walked around the yard, looking at this or that. When she was hungry, she went into the kitchen to make a sandwich or ate blueberries from the garden, but she barely spoke. Her behavior remained a mystery to all of her witnesses, and whenever she was prompted to do anything outside of her daily ritual, she would simply say, "I'd rather not." Her father screamed at her at the top of his voice. He spoke of wasted potential. He cried, "What am I supposed to do with you?" He stomped and broke things. His wife consoled him, reminding him that 1 out of 7 isn't a bad ratio. And this happens to families all the time. Sometimes it's just a bad apple. But he wasn't convinced. He had seen what his daughter was capable of. He had seen her competence demonstrated. This was clearly a choice, and a choice he could not comprehend. So he decided to make her choose. An ultimatum. He said to her, You either snap out of it and return to the real world, or I withdraw all of my support for you and disown you from my will, so help me. You can either start a family with your loyal husband or get back to work." And to this she said, "I'd rather not." He did not expect her to say that, which was odd, considering it had been a position she maintained for weeks. But he had learned long ago never to make a threat if you're not willing to follow through with it. So he called the doctors and asked for his daughter to be picked up and brought to the asylum. As they continued to call for legal consultation on how to maintain their daughter's assets, Wanda was walking barefoot across the yard and toward the forest, where she might find some peace and quiet. I pulled my head from the pool, gasping. I looked at Wanda and saw her staring at me with a mild amusement before returning her gaze to the sky. I felt guilty for disrupting her peace, and conflicted from having peered into her life. Catching my breath, I called one last time. I said, "I will leave you be. I'm sorry. Will you please grant me permission to share your story with others?" And with a smile, she closed her eyes and said, "I'd rather not."